Biden tells storm hit Puerto Rico, America's with you. U.S. suicide rate rose in 2021 after falling for 2 years. Amnesty urges state leaders to ban guns near polling places. UN Human Rights Office releases report on global systemic racism. COVID disinfectant poisoning kills at least 13 Uyghurs in village in East Turkestan. From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. President Joe Biden toured hurricane-devastated areas of Puerto Rico on Monday, promising the U.S. territory that America's with you. He and First Lady Jill Biden visited Ponce on the south coast, which was pounded by Hurricane Fiona last month. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre described it as the hardest hit area of Puerto Rico. Biden said he is committed to this island, which has often felt overlooked during natural disasters. Thousands of people in Puerto Rico remain without power. At least 7% of customers are still without electricity and 5% without water. Biden pledged $60 million to strengthen storm defenses, including flood barricades and warning systems. On Wednesday, the President and First Lady are also set to review the devastation caused by deadly Hurricane Ian in Florida. U.S. President Joe Biden expressed concern on Monday over Iranian Security Forces' response against peaceful protests in the country. He warned this week that Washington will impose sanctions on perpetrators of violence against demonstrators. He added the U.S. will continue holding Iranian officials accountable and supporting the rights of Iranians to protest freely. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on Monday accused the United States and Israel of fomenting the wave of nationwide unrest. The death toll from the weeks-long protests in Iran has surged to 92, according to a Norway-based human rights group. Protests were sparked over the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini in police custody on September 16th. Amini's family has accused the police of beating her, causing her to suffer a stroke. An Iranian government investigation into the incident is ongoing. U.S. forces carried out an airstrike targeting and killing a leader within the Al-Shabab militant group, U.S. Africa Command said Monday. The strike targeted a network about 230 miles southwest of the capital, Mogadishu, it said. The military's initial assessment is that the leader, whom it did not identify, was killed, and the strike did not result in civilian casualties. U.S. Africa Command declined to provide specific details on the types of units involved in the strike. It also did not outline what kinds of equipment were used, citing operations security. The U.S. suicide rate rose in 2021, particularly among young men, after a 2-year decline, according to official data released Friday. The number of suicides went up from around 46,000 in 2020 to 47,650 in 2021. The numbers are based on preliminary figures from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The most significant increase was among young boys and men between the ages of 15 and 24, where the rate rose 8%. 6 red states in the U.S. are suing the Biden administration over its student loan debt forgiveness plan. Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Carolina filed their lawsuit Thursday in Missouri. President Biden has pledged to cancel up to $20,000 in student loan debt for individuals making less than $125,000 a year. The administration based its plan on a 2003 law initially meant to help military members. That law says Biden can reduce or erase student loan debts during times of national emergency. But the red state's lawsuit says Biden's plan was not remotely tailored to address the effects of the pandemic on federal student loan borrowers. It adds that after Biden's recent declaration that the COVID-19 pandemic is over, he cannot use it as a justification for his debt relief plan, ABC News reports. Opening arguments began Monday in the federal trial of Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes and 4 associates on charges of seditious conspiracy. Rhodes is among hundreds of defendants charged in relation to the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. The far-right militia group's prosecution is the most significant to date. Oath Keepers, founded in 2009, is largely made up of military veterans who breached the Capitol in tactical gear in 2 military-style attacks. They stashed weapons across the Potomac River in Virginia in preparation for a potential escalation of the hours-long assault, according to prosecutors. The trial raises the question of whether an extremist group acting as an unorganized militia can act as the personal army for an authoritarian president. Amnesty urges state leaders to ban guns near polling places. Details after the break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour, walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Abdul Malik Mujahid. Muslims get bombarded with negative news, so good things which we do remain unknown. For example, do you know that Muslim Americans helped stop the genocide in Bosnia? Recently, Muslim Americans defeated Apple, Coca-Cola, Nike, and their lobbies to get a law passed through Congress about Uyghurs. Do you also know that it were Muslim Americans who work hard and smart to block Modi from entering the United States for 10 years? Yes, Alhamdulillah. All of that is your credit. Let's keep doing the good thing. Alhamdulillah, 3 achievers of our community are coming to Chicago to help strengthen Justice for All. Justice for All is a human rights organization run by Muslims based in Chicago. We will honor Arsalan Suleiman, a young person raised in our communities who filed a lawsuit on Burma because of the Rohingya genocide. We'll also honor Ambassador Rashad Hussain, raised in our communities, married in Chicago, and who is now the ambassador at large for international religious freedom. In addition, we will honor the latest commissioner of USERF, Imam Muhammad Majid, for his relentless support for Burma Task Force. Please join me. Let's come together on October 9th in Chicago. Scan this code to register or visit justiceforall.org/Chicago. Assalamu alaikum. To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. Amnesty International USA on Monday urged state leaders to ban guns at or near polling places during the 2022 midterm elections next month. The group cited political unrest following the last presidential election, a rise in white supremacist violence, and a historic surge in firearms sales in the United States. In a letter, Amnesty USA urged governors and secretaries of state to ensure the safety of voters, poll workers, and people in the vicinity. The group urged authorities to take proactive, immediate action to end gun violence in their communities. Amnesty warned there's potential of seeing armed election monitors and armed voters at polls. It cited supercharged rhetoric and issues, including reproductive rights, gun rights, refugee and migrant rights, the war in Ukraine, and economic issues as reasons. The Hindu American Foundation has filed a complaint against the state of California, objecting to a recent caste discrimination lawsuit. The group said the lawsuit violates the constitutional rights of Hindu Americans. The group said it falsely claims Hindu Americans inherently hold discriminatory beliefs in a caste system. The complaint reads, "The state is treating Hindus in a manner that is different from the way it treats every other religious group." In a landmark suit filed in 2020, an anonymous Cisco employee in California claimed his Hindu supervisors cut him out of meetings and failed to promote him because he is Dalit. Dalits are members of the lowest stratum of India's social and religious caste hierarchy. The employee further claimed Cisco officials retaliated against him after he brought the discrimination to their attention. The Hindu American Foundation has said ending caste discrimination is a worthy goal that furthers Hinduism's belief in the equal and divine essence of all people. The foundation also says caste is not a core tenet of the Hindu religion. Bangladesh's Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina slammed the U.S. for sheltering a convicted killer of her nation's founding leader, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Hasina made the statement in an interview on the private Shomoy TV network. The Bangladeshi premier spoke publicly Friday at a gathering of leaders and activists of the ruling Awami League Party's U.S. chapter in Virginia. She also accused the U.S. of sheltering the 1971 war's criminals and their children, and many other convicted killers she claims are conspiring against Bangladesh. Hasina said in a report published Saturday her government wants to repatriate fugitive M.A. Rashid Chaudhry, who was sentenced to death by a Bangladeshi court. The U.S. administration has made no specific statements regarding Chaudhry's repatriation. A Pakistani court on Monday dismissed a contempt of court case against former Prime Minister Imran Khan. A 5-member bench of the Islamabad High Court, headed by Chief Justice Athar Minallah, accepted Khan's affidavit and dismissed the show cause notice. The court initiated contempt proceedings against Khan after his speech at a public rally in Islamabad on August 20th. He was accused of threatening police officials and the woman judge who extended the physical remand of Shehbaz Gill, Khan's chief of staff, arrested over treason charges. On September 22nd, the court deferred the case proceedings for 2 weeks after Khan said he was willing to apologize for his controversial remarks about the female judge. The UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights released a report Friday on promoting human rights for Africans and people of African descent. The office suggested a comprehensive approach to dismantling systems that perpetuate racism across all aspects of life. Acting High Commissioner for Human Rights Nada Al-Nashif said many initiatives have been piecemeal and states must be more proactive in ending systemic racism. The report details patterns of discriminatory treatment, excessive force by law enforcement, unlawful deportations, and disproportionate numbers of people of African descent in prison systems globally. It focuses on 7 cases of police-related fatalities, including George Floyd and Breonna Taylor in the United States. Other cases are Kevin Clark in the United Kingdom, Luana Barbosa dos Reis Santos in Brazil, Adama Traore in France, and Janer Garcia Palomino in Colombia. The report contains a 4-point agenda to help advance the end to systemic racism and hold those who violate human rights accountable. At least 13 Uyghurs have died due to poisoning from disinfectants sprayed in their homes last week, used to fight COVID-19. There has been a wave of coronavirus infections in the East Turkestan region, officials said. The Uyghurs who died are among thousands they're reported to have been poisoned by disinfectants, according to social media reports. Videos shared online showed authorities spraying inner walls, furniture, bedding, as well as inside refrigerators in homes. Residents said planes with sprayers have flown over the area frequently since the lockdown. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
A free 3-minute online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour, walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear. needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Abdul Malik Mujahid. Muslims get bombarded with negative news, so good things which we do remain unknown. For example, do you know that Muslim Americans helped stop the genocide in Bosnia? Recently, Muslim Americans defeated Apple, Coca-Cola, Nike, and their lobbies to get a law passed through Congress about Uyghurs. Do you also know that it were Muslim Americans who work hard and smart to block Modi from entering the United States for 10 years? Yes, Alhamdulillah. All of that is your credit. Let's keep doing the good thing. Alhamdulillah, 3 achievers of our community are coming to Chicago to help strengthen Justice for All. Justice for All is a human rights organization run by Muslims based in Chicago. We will honor Arsalan Suleiman, a young person raised in our communities who filed a lawsuit on Burma because of the Rohingya genocide. We'll also honor Ambassador Rashad Hussain, raised in our communities, married in Chicago, and who is now the ambassador at large for international religious freedom. In addition, we will honor the latest commissioner of USERF, Imam Muhammad Majid, for his relentless support for Burma Task Force. Please join me. Let's come together on October 9th in Chicago. Scan this code to register or visit justiceforall.org/Chicago. Assalamu alaikum.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour, walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. It's time for our in-depth analysis segment. Let's watch.
Thank you, Samana. A Jewish American journalist, Cathy Harper, has been fired for calling Israel an apartheid state. That's it. The Hill is the name of the paper I have seen here and there in Washington, D.C., more in political circles. Other people have been reporting and talking about Israel being apartheid. What happened to Cathy Harper? We have with us Phyllis Bennis, who directs the New Internationalism Project at the Institute of Policy Studies, focusing on the Middle East. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Great to be with you.
So what are the effects of Cathy Harper being fired?
As I understand it, she was working in a temporary capacity with Hill TV, doing a commentary, and her commentary focused on providing some context to what had happened in the last couple of weeks with Representative Rashida Tlaib, the well-known Palestinian member of Congress, who had spoken out, as so many have. In this case, she had said to her colleagues that it's very difficult or impossible to be progressive in any serious way if you support the apartheid government of Israel. That was seen as unacceptable in some circles. And in doing a commentary that talked about it and provided some context, including going through the numerous organizations, human rights organizations well known around the world, as well as Israeli organizations and others, that have called Israel an apartheid state based on a very careful legal analysis of Israeli violations of the International Covenant Against Apartheid. Cathy Harper was then told her services were no longer required. So this is really not so much about Cathy Harper, but it's much more about this question of identifying Israel as an apartheid state both in terms of the facts of that allegation and the question of who gets to say it. Who gets to say that Israel is carrying out apartheid policies? And that's very much at the core of this question.
I have seen in New York Times have several reports about that particular one. So this question which you're raising, who get to say it? Could you elaborate a little more on that?
Sure. The allegations of Israel as an apartheid state is a long-standing issue. This is something that South African analysts and South African leaders, from Nelson Mandela to Archbishop Desmond Tutu and a host of others, have said for many years, mimicking what Palestinians themselves have said, that the system that applies to Palestinians in territories controlled by Israel, inside Israel itself, in the 1948 territories, in the occupied West Bank, Gaza Strip, and occupied East Jerusalem, for the refugees, that the distinction between how Israeli Jews are treated and how Palestinians are treated in those territories violates the conditions, violates the terms of the International Covenant Against Apartheid. But who says it has a lot to do with how seriously it's taken and how much punishment may be levied against those who make that claim. So in the last 2 years, we've seen a huge escalation in the number of very well-known human rights organizations, from Human Rights Watch to Amnesty International to Israeli human rights organizations like B'Tselem or Yesh Din, to certain agencies of the United Nations, and of course members of Congress themselves, not only Representative Tlaib, have said very explicitly that Israel is an apartheid state. There are differences in those analyses in terms of where they think the category of apartheid applies, but all of them agree that in some part, or in some cases all of the territory that Israel controls, it is an apartheid regime where Palestinians are mistreated for the purpose of maintaining Jewish Israeli citizens with more privilege. And that's the very essence of what apartheid amounts to. So the question then is, who gets to say that? You know, Israelis themselves use the term apartheid to describe the wall that they have built inside. 85% of it is inside the occupied West Bank. They don't say apartheid. They say the word in Hebrew, hafrada. But the word hafrada means separation. In Afrikaans, separation, the English word, is apartheid. So in fact, Israel uses that term as well. They just don't acknowledge that that's the term they're using. In this case, the fact that the allegation was made by a woman of color, by a Muslim, by a Palestinian member of Congress, had everything to do with the fact that she was attacked the way she was when other members of Congress have said the same thing. Representative Betty McCollum has said that Israel's treatment of Palestinians amounts to apartheid. All these other people have said it as well, who don't get attacked in the same way. They may get criticized, but it does not become this kind of all-sided attack of making the false claim that it is anti-Semitic to call Israel apartheid. That claim is used primarily against people of color.
Would you then say that people of color, or Muslims in particular, have less freedom of speech than other friends and neighbors?
I think that has been what we've seen in this country on this issue. That's not to say that other people, including white people, including Jews, people like me, who criticize Israel as an apartheid state, don't get criticized. We do. And people have faced other problems as well. But the criticism is far greater for people of color. And that's true not only for using the word apartheid, but for criticisms of Israel's practices across the board. Mark Lamont Hill, a very well-known Black academic, speaking at the United Nations 2 years ago, used the term, he spoke of the need for Palestine to be free from the river to the sea, which is a long-standing way of describing the need for equality of everyone living inside Israel, inside the occupied territories. But he was fired from CNN as a result of saying that at the United Nations. So we do see a discrepancy in who gets punished more severely for using this same language that other people use and may get criticized, but don't get punished in the same way. There are exceptions for sure. People have lost their job in academia, and journalists in particular. So Cathy Harper is the latest one, who is Jewish and white, is now no longer able to work for the Hill TV as she was working for. So people do pay a huge price, but I think it is true that people of color and Muslims pay a higher price. That's certainly true in this case.
So in this case, Cathy Harper being Jewish was not of much help.
It rarely is when we actually take up the full-scale criticism of Israeli policies. The supporters of Israel in this country are not only Jewish, that's never been the case. The pro-Israel lobby includes Jewish organizations, certainly, but also includes organizations like CUFI, Christians United for Israel, which plays a very important role, particularly in the Republican Party. What we are looking at now is a moment of incredible shifting of the discourse around Israel and Palestine. And Malik, some of this is emerging now in new polls that have come out that indicate, for example, 25% now of American Jews believe that Israel is an apartheid state. 22% of them believe that Israel is carrying out a genocide against Palestinians. That's a huge shift in public opinion. When I was a Jewish kid growing up in California, there were no organizations like Jewish Voice for Peace that explicitly is based on support for Palestinian rights. That wasn't an option. Today, we're seeing among young Jews, people are flocking to those kinds of organizations. We're seeing that support for Israel has become a very sectarian, partisan issue, where overwhelmingly more Republicans support Israel than do Democrats. That doesn't mean that Democrats are all out there supporting Palestinian rights, far from it. But it does mean that when you look at the polls as a snapshot of, of changing positions, changing opinions, you see a really massive shift that's underway. And it's primarily visible among Democrats of color, young Democrats, and Jewish Democrats themselves.
Share with me, what's your knowledge in the area that those people who fight hate and anti-Semitism, aren't they concerned about the application of anti-Semitic charge to those people who are criticizing Israeli policies?
Absolutely. And the weaponization of false accusations of anti-Semitism has become a huge problem. It's a problem in the Palestinian rights movement. It's a problem because it's not based on truth. The truth is that anti-Semitism in this country is on the rise, and it's very dangerous. It's a newly violent version of anti-Semitism. So we see the killing of Jews at prayer in Pittsburgh in their synagogue. We see the attacks on Jews in San Diego. We saw in Charlottesville the marching fascist elements who were chanting, "Jews will not replace us." So this kind of violent anti-Semitism is absolutely on the rise, and it's linked to white supremacy, violent white supremacy. And yet, we hear from even the intelligence agencies of the United States, they agree that violent white supremacy is the most dangerous form of extremism today, far more than Islamist terror from abroad. And yet, the public sort of positions that are put forward, where we hear about anti-Semitism in the press, in the public, sometimes in Congress, is far more frequently used as a weapon against those people using nonviolent means to pressure Israel to make change in how they treat the Palestinians. So, for example, supporters of what's known as the BDS movement, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, which is a movement designed to bring nonviolent economic and cultural pressure to bear to stop Israeli violations. They are accused of being anti-Semitic because they are criticizing the state of Israel. There's nothing anti-Semitic about it, but the accusation is used too often to suppress that kind of discussion.
Phyllis, Amnesty International have said it now, Human Rights Watch have said, and Beth Salim came out with the same. Now United Nations Rapporteur is using the term apartheid. But who started this all? Will that be true to say that it was the South African Liberation Movement who started applying apartheid charge to Israel first?
It actually came first from Palestinians who learned as internationalists what apartheid in South Africa looked like and said, there are parallels here. And we do have to be careful. Israeli apartheid doesn't really look very much like South African apartheid. They're very different. But the important thing, this is about international law. And if we look at the International Covenant Against the Crime of Apartheid, we can see that Israeli practices violate that covenant. It's not because it looks just like what the South African white population did to Black South Africans. There's very little that looks the same. But they both violate that international covenant, and it was Palestinians who first raised it. South Africans certainly, as you say, took up that understanding, and very notable South African leaders like Nelson Mandela, like Bishop Tutu, used that language and recognized those parallels. The movement for Palestinian rights in South Africa today is focusing very much on calling for the reopening at the United Nations of the Special Committee Against Apartheid, precisely because they're saying, we have overturned apartheid in our country, but we know that it exists in other parts of the world. So there needs to be a reopening of that committee to help the UN define where those violations of the laws against apartheid are being carried out, where they are occurring.
Well, thank you so much, Phyllis Bennis, for your time. Truly appreciate your wisdom and insight.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
Back to you, Samana.
Thank you. That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.